In this episode, we're going to be talking about the country of Madagascar and how tariffs would impact that country. We already have started a series about doing a country breakdown of the countries, the top countries that are going to be worst hit by the tariffs. The tariffs, thank God, has been put on pause for 90 days, but who knows? Who knows what's going to happen next after 90 days? So there were certain classes of African countries that were terribly, or that were going to be terribly hammered by the US tariffs. And I found it, to me, it's joyful to kind of break it down so that all of us can understand what is going to happen in those countries and by extension on the African continent. And gladly, not just identifying the problems, but also using the tools available to us. We use the AfricaInsights.ai platform to also map out strategies or things that the countries, the nations could do. Most of these, they probably may be doing them already. That are like opportunities or things they could leverage to get out of the rut that potentially the tariffs are going to bring to their economies. And I can tell you, the tariffs are not good. They are not good for Africa at all. But there's always a way out. There's always a way out. We can control our destiny, and we need to focus on, or as Africans, we focus on the things that we control, right? And the things that we control, some of the things that I'm going to be sharing about, the things that we control. The things that we do not control, we do not control. All right, so without much ado, let's jump straight in. We're going to be zoning in to the country of Madagascar. And I think to help us do that, if you haven't already watched, I've done one episode already in this line of content about the country of Lesotho, which happens to be, I think, one of the smallest African countries with a population of 2.3 million people, and how they were, the tariffs going to slaughter them, right? If you haven't taken a look at that content, I think it's going to be somewhere on this. There's going to be a link to it, I think, above here, that you can take a look at. Right. So without much ado, I just want to quickly show you the country of Madagascar. Let me start by sharing my screen. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. So basically, Madagascar is being hit by a whooping. That's the second nation to be penalized by the quote-unquote Trump tariffs. Thank God it's been placed on hold for 90 days. But as I said, you never know what's going to happen. So they are being hit. They are the second in terms of, those who are being hammered. So Lesotho, Madagascar, and then the third is going to be Mauritius. So we will do Mauritius. So if you want to look at it, I mean, just if you haven't already subscribe and click on the notification button so that when I do the next video, which is going to be for Mauritius, you are going to see that. And to me, as much as I'm loving this exposition of knowledge, I'm also learning. I'm enjoying it and learning more about the continent of Africa as we speak. So if you already haven't subscribed, this is a good opportunity to do so, because I bring you quality content, information that is needed for you to make investment decisions on the content, information that's able to help you make vital market entry decisions, and also to know about your continent or your country more. All right, so let's jump right into it. So, as I said, Madagascar is going to be hit. Let me just use my clicker here. Madagascar is going to be hit by 47%, which is massive, and 47%. So, in terms of its magnitude, is big. But don't take my word for it. Let's use the Africa Insights tool to help us see precisely what is going on, and you are going to be marveled. So I will just log in. I'll just log in here, right, and then get into the meat of it. So, all right. So after logging in, okay. So these are the tools that some of the tools that we're going to use. This is a comprehensive platform, and I'm glad to let you know that This is a solution that we built this. There's nothing of its kind ever. But I enjoy using it for research purposes and using it also for our knowledge sharing. Okay. So first things first. The first thing that we're going to be looking at, I just want to look at the economic indicators. We need to set the ground rules or um, the overall picture of the country. Okay, so as it pertains, the overall picture for the country, we're going to be looking at certain economic indicators. One of them is the GDP growth rate, which happens to be in terms of revenue, in layman's terms. It's not everybody who is an economist. And I'm not an economist either, just a common sense observer who loves numbers and data and analysis, right? So the GDP growth rate is a percentage increase of the country's economic output. Big English. For our professional investors, they don't need any explanation. But for those who do not know much about these kind of jargons, typically when an organization sells widgets and they at the end of the year, the the volume that is sold is their revenue or their sales for the year. Let's transpose that onto a country. The country may not be selling widgets like a company does or providing services like maybe a consulting firm does, but the country has output. They have exports. They do many things. They, we have extract like they export gold, diamond, oil. All those things are revenues that come in. So at the end of the year, how much is generated in the year is their gross, is their output, the output of the nation. So the GDP growth rate checks on year by year. Has there been growth in the quantum of the output that the country has generated, right? So if year one, the country generated, let's say, $100 million, right? Just as an example. And year two, they generated $200 million. It means that they've grown 100%, isn't it? So that's what we're going to be looking at, some of these metrics to help us understand the dynamics of the country of Madagascar. I'm excited. I hope you are too. All right. So to do that, we're using the AfricaInsights.ai tool, and to you click on this button, it's going to load the visual for GDP growth rate, right? So the first thing I'm going to see is Madagascar. It's almost like an island within a continent, actually. Awesome. So this is the GDP growth rate by country, the visual of it, which is fantastic. It's amazing. And as you can see from this, Madagascar, it's the island on this is Madagascar, actually. So I think Madagascar has even been used as a movie. And I like to move it. My kids love it. So I also love it. So this is Madagascar. Their GDP growth rate is 4.6%, which is not too bad because, as you can see, GDP, it says that if a higher GDP, higher rate indicates stronger economic growth, right? With rates above 5% considered very strong for African economies. So 4.6% to 5% is not that, but the GDP is not, the growth rate is not that bad at all compared to what we saw for Lesotho. So that's it. We're just building the foundation, the building blocks for that. And I want you to follow along with me. All right. So let's look at their population size also. That would also tell us a story. So a country of GDP of 4.6%. For Africa, it's not that bad. It means the GDP is okay. Then we look at the population size as well. And so we go to the population tab, and then we also launch the visual for the population. It's something similar. So we look at it over here. It's 32.5 million. Actually, you can see it even from the data table as well. So you can visualize it from here, arranged from the highest to the least. So Madagascar is here, 32.513. Same here. The visual shows that as well, 32.513. So mid-size kind of country, almost like the size of Ghana. So it's like, well-positioned, well-endowed country. So let's look at also the country's fiscal policy direction. Fiscal policy direction, he says that fiscal policy direction indicates a government's approach to managing the fiscal resources and economic development of the nation, right? So it's classified into three different buckets. Economies that are expansionary, that is, they are spending money, right? They are doing a lot of government spending. Typically, you see that for nations that are going to be doing elections, where the ruling party spends and spends and spends to try to woo voters or to try to buy voters, quote unquote, right? So it happens. And it has its consequences. Expansionary economy is not always good. It's not always great. But that's one bucket. The other one is neutral, where like they tighten their budget, they are balancing the books. They want to make sure that they are managing their resources very, very wisely. And then the other one is contraction. When the country has possibly spent and spent and spent, they borrowed to spend, and now their debt is choking them, and then they want to contract to be able to manage their debt, right? So that's how typically fiscal policy in a layman's term is classified. All right. So with that said, let's look at the fiscal policy direction of Madagascar as a nation. So when we look at that, let me zoom in a little bit. So this orange color means that they are neutral. Madagascar, in terms of fiscal policy, is neutral. It says implementing reforms. I'm just reading off the screen. They are implementing reforms to enhance fiscal stability, increase revenue mobilization through tax policy reform, and support economic growth, right? So basically, they are neutral. They are trying to balance the books. So they are not doing anything crazy, anything out of this world. They're just, so this is the foundation of this content, where we know where this nation, Madagascar, in terms of the main economic underpinning of the nation. So let's look at, we're going to look at the impact of the tariff. But to help us do that, we're still laying the blocks, the building blocks. So the next thing is to look at what do they actually even export that got them into the crosshairs of President Trump, right? What do they really, what does the country produce? Because if I wasn't doing this research for this content, I wouldn't have known nothing about Madagascar. So I pulled them up and I said, okay, let's do an exports finder for the country of Madagascar, right? So I searched for them and then I launched the export finder, which is one of the tools here. So launching the export finder tool, notice, okay, all right, so we've got some results, right? So the results are very interesting. So Madagascar does some manufacturing. They do some mining, oil and energy and marine resources, because they have a huge coastline, right? The coastline is massive. So I'm not surprised that they're doing some marine activity, minerals and mining, and some agriculture, right? So we're just going to run through this list a little bit slowly. So the first thing is manufacturing. I'm interested in that. So they do some kind of knit or crochet clothing, clothing and accessories, and non-knit men's. So basically, their manufacturing is purely garment. If you haven't watched the Lesotho video, do want to watch it, because it's almost a similar pattern to Lesotho, right? Lesotho was being slammed 50% tariff. These guys, Madagascar, being slammed 47%. What's the commonality? They do manufacturing in the apparel and garment industry. Manufacturing in the apparel and garment industry. So it's telling you that the knit or crochet clothing, their exports, is about $260 million a year as at 2023, right? The exact amount is 256.8 in 2023. So we will round up 260, right? And clothing and accessories that are non-knit or crochet, that's $253 million as a 2023 estimate. And then they do non-knit men's suits valued at approximately $152 million US dollars. So when you sum this all up, you are looking at somewhere roughly about 650, $700 million a year in terms of their export proceeds are coming, export proceeds from garment manufacturing. To me, I don't even need to go further to notice that this could be the reason why they are being hit. Okay. Because we're going to find out where they export these garments to. And I'm not a magician, but knowing that they've been slammed and hit by that massive tariff, instinctively will tell me that their major export destination for the garment and apparel is going to be the US. But let the data tell us. I don't want to get ahead of myself. All right, before then there are a few other things. They do some precious metals exports. It's also sizable, 230 million. Some salt, sulfur, and stone. Some minerals and oils. They are like medium. And then the fish as well. I think this is an area that Madagascar could really blow up when it comes to Africa, especially. I don't know the type of fish that they do, but Africa consumes a lot of fish, particularly canned fish, sardine, tuna, and those things. I wish or I hope they do that as well and really target the African market. Then they do nickel. I know nickel is a major export, and then vanilla as well. I know vanilla because a friend of mine in America was telling me about they importing vanilla from America for coffee shops, right? So, oh yes, so it's here. So, vanilla as well. Vanilla is big. Look at that. Their export is valued at $583 million as of 2022. So these, to me, these are the big blocks. So the vanilla piece, the nickel piece, and then the garment manufacturing. All right. So there are others, but I think they are all marginal. So I wouldn't want to spend too much time. They do some coffee, tea, and spices as well, which is also quite big, right? So it's a kind of a well-rounded in terms of their exports are not just one angle like Lesotho is. They have a little bit more wiggle room in terms of the diverse nature of their export communities. But I can tell you by far, garment manufacturing, it's the leader in Madagascar. So, with that said, I always want the data to lead us to our destination, not my thinking or my emotion or what I wish, right? So, let the data take us to our destination. So, let's drill deeper into this. Since the report didn't tell us the destination countries that they export these things to, let's go to the market intelligence chapter, so AI chatbot that can drill deep. It can drill deep into a country by sector. So we know that has to do with the country of Madagascar. So let's drill. We're gonna query this using the chatbot tool, and we're going to select the industry or sector of manufacturing, right? So manufacturing, see here. All right. So let's now query because we didn't know. We said, okay, what I wanted to ask, what are the main export destinations for textiles? Textile and probably textile related. Let me type that in. So I'll say what are the main export destinations? Okay, destinations for for uh, uh, textiles and its related products. Let's see what we find. Okay, great. So we got the results back. A little bit is interesting. He says Madagascar's textile sector is a significant contributor to its economy. I agree, 100%, if not the biggest sector or largest sector. It says United States. So the biggest, as you know, I'm no prophet, but I was just guessing and I got it right. So it says United States benefiting from the Africa. I'm glad this is being reviewed. So, and I want you to go back once again, watch the Lesotho video because a similar playbook is here, right? So, benefit from the African Growth and Opportunities Act, which allows for tariff-free entry. The US is a crucial market for Madagascar textiles. So, the same playbook with Lesotho. Lesotho exports like $150 million a year to the US market, and they're doing exactly what Madagascar does. And the reason why they're doing that is simply there's a vehicle that was designed, I think, in the George Bush Jr. era to help African countries get out of poverty. And how did they do that? To open the US market up for Africans to export products into the US with no tariffs. And in doing so, it helps African countries build their economies, build their manufacturing base, particularly in the area of textiles. And I think food and clothing, clothing, textiles anyway, food and other sectors that Africa could manufacture these things and then produce them. The issue is that that vehicle, that's the African Growth and Opportunities Act, that agreement is up for renewal at the end of this year. And to me, it doesn't look as if it's going to be renewed under this administration. So Lesotho, and in this case, Madagascar, they've been taking massive advantage of this. And hence the reason why they may have a trade surplus with the US. Because these are poor countries. Most sub-Saharan African countries struggle economically. This no news, right? Most are doing everything they can to get up on their feet. Programs like the AGOA helped a lot of African nations, especially small, mid-sized, mom-and-pop business, be able to export to the US market. And this is what it is. He says textiles made up of 37% of exports to the US. 37% of their export to the US. In 2023, textiles made up 37% of exports to the US. France is also a key European partner. France imports a substantial portion of Madagascar's textiles as well, which is great news. I didn't see that for Lesotho. So already I'm seeing that possibly the impact on these Trump tariffs may not be that crushing on Madagascar as it probably would be on Lesotho, because they are a little bit diversified in their export product. And also, I'm looking at it, it looks as if they are even also diversified in their export destination, which is interesting. So I'm seeing South Africa was also going to be a major market here. And another important market is in apparel and apparel export. And then I'm seeing they're even listing that with significant customers like Woolworth and Mr. Price in South Africa, right? And then UK is also a beneficiary of Madagascar exports, being an export destination for their textiles, right? So this report is detailed. So look I just queried it. This is the simple query. I queried, and it's giving me not just the answer, but it's also giving me market conditions and opportunities and kind of key challenges and risks. That's why we created and launched AfricaInsights.ai. It's powerful. It's powerful. So it says that let's look at a little bit about the market conditions. Right? It says growth and recovery. The textile sector has shown resilience, and I agree. Recovering from COVID pandemic and benefiting from preferential trade agreements like AGOA and I think another agreement is called Everything But Arms systems with the EU. So they also have preferential trade treatment with the EU, which is amazing, right? Because I didn't see that for Lesotho. Lesotho is really exposed, but Madagascar may not be that much exposed. Yes, it's going to affect them in a way, but not at the levels by which it could crush Lesotho. So that is interesting to see, right? So, and a few others, it's talking about opportunities and things, trade tariffs and export, and it's talking about key challenges here and there. But I don't want to go too much into that. I just want to focus more on what they can do to recover, right? So I see some here. It says that opportunities, trade tariffs, and export. AGOA provides a competitive edge for exports to the US, which possibly might end at the end of this year, if I'm not mistaken. I hope it doesn't end, but from the signals I'm getting and the things I'm seeing, I don't have too much hope, right, for that. I stand to be corrected, but I don't have too much hope, right? Okay, so he said that there are regional markets that they could participate in. SADC, COMESA, they are all regional markets. I think SADC stands for Southern African Development Corporation or something. And COMESA, I think, is in East Africa as well. That these are regional trading blocks. And also, they could participate or be a part of the AfCFTA, Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, which they could benefit from big time. Because as I said in the Lesotho video, garment manufacturing, West Africa, for instance, is in dire need of those kind of products. I can tell you for a fact that if they find their way in that West Africa, possibly East Africa, Central Africa, yes, there's market. There's market for that. All right. Okay. So let's look at one final thing, which is their market insight. That's going to be sector analysis. The sector of manufacturing in Madagascar, and we'll bring it. So let's look at Madagascar the same way. And we're going to look at the sector is manufacturing. And we're going to look at the sector performance score. That is how the sector is shaped up in terms of investment opportunity for investors. FDI, even diaspora investment, how the sector is primed for that. So I wouldn't, it's a large report. I wouldn't read all of it. Let me do the market overview for that, right? He says the manufacturing sector in Madagascar is relatively small. Yes. Global sense, yes. In African sense, not that bad, because in Africa, not many countries do very well in manufacturing. We do very well at exporting our raw materials and commodities, but not too much manufacturing. So we take that with a grain of salt, right? Since accounting for 9% of GDP and is dominated by industries such as textiles, right? So textiles is the leader. And agro industry and soap making, blah, blah, blah. So other things. This, despite its potential, the sector faces significant challenges, including lack of infrastructure and stable energy supply, which is, to me, many sub-Saharan African countries face that same. So Madagascar's strategic location and natural resources offer opportunities for, I would say, definitely in the area of fishing, tourism, and those things. That country could blow up big time in a good way. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. But what I really wanted to see was this sector performance, which in my mind looks a little bit low. That means, yes, in terms of performance, the sector is okay, but I'm surprised it's that low. And I want to read the rationale. The rationale is that Madagascar's manufacturing sector, he says it presents solid opportunity. Yes, particularly due to its strategic location and natural resources, and diversification of foreign direct investment. The growth dynamics are promising with resilient textile and growing extractive sectors, supported by infrastructure development. However, challenges such as infrastructure bottlenecks, energy supply, political instability temper overall opportunity. Right. So this is a report, right? I don't need to go any further. Yes, the opportunity is there, but there needs to be these kind of things hampered. Political instability is always going to be a major drawback for a country's development. I hope they fix that. So let's see how the opportunities they have to get out of that. So we can look at the investment opportunities finder in the manufacturing sector. If they are going to be hit by tariffs, I think they are doing okay already. I'm looking at it from the point of view as an African. Are they going to be slaughtered? I know Lesotho is being dealt a heavy hand if this tariff thing is holds, right? If it holds, then they're going to be. But I'm seeing Madagascar has a little bit of wiggle room, which is somewhat refreshing. I mean, comparatively, it's somewhat. So let's look at the opportunities in that sector as it relates to the country of Madagascar. Okay, great. So we've got our results back. I'm not going to read all the overview, amazing information, but I'm just going to go through a few of the opportunities that are available for that country in the manufacturing sector. And already I see that textile and apparel manufacturing expansion. So that means that they need to expand their capacities. It's growth in textile manufacturing driven by local processing and sustainable production. The textile industry is expected to grow by 4%, focusing on value addition through local processing of raw materials and sustainable practices to meet international market demands. There's room for more textile and garment production. Then there's agro processing and food manufacturing. There is also nickel and graphite processing facilities. That's the opportunity because they export nickel. And in this case, graphite a lot. It would be best for them to have those kind of processing facilities locally to be able to do that, to add value to the nickel before they ship them out. Now, there's also opportunity for renewable energy equipment manufacturing as well, solar panels and all those kind of things. There's opportunity for packaging and logistics materials production as well. Chemical and pharmaceutical manufacturing. I don't have time to delve into the pharmaceutical and healthcare as a sector, but I'll be interested to see why it's flagging that industry has a potential for investment opportunity. Then there's digital and automation solutions for manufacturing as well. So these are some of the high level opportunities that the country could morph into. So once again, if you haven't subscribed to this lovely channel, do well to do so. And I love Madagascar because of I Like to Do It, that movie. Anyway, so in terms of overall summary, I don't think they are being, yes, 47% tariff on the US market is a killer for anything, any country, let alone a developing country like Madagascar. But I think the country has wiggle they could play by leveraging the African market, by instead of sending stuff to the US, they could repurpose those stuff and send to the EU because they already have these preferential agreements with the EU already, and there are a slew of other things that they could do in terms of opportunity. To me, yes, it's a bitter pill to swallow, but it's not that bitter when you compare to Lesotho. All right, see you when we ship our next episode. Thank you.